Greetings to the viewers of the KCGC TV. Myself, Dr. Divya Sharma, Assistant Professor, Khalsa College of Law, Amritsar. Today, I have chosen the topic of nature, essentials, and scope of law of torts. The concept of law of torts has been originated from law of England, that is the common law. The word tort has been derived from a Latin term tortum, which means twisted. It is equivalent to the English term wrong. Tort is a conduct which is not straight, which is not lawful, which is crooked, which is twisted. Any behavior which is not acceptable by the law can be termed as a tort. Tort falls under the category of the civil laws. There are different kinds of the civil laws. For example, law of contract, property law, specific relief act, Hindu law. There are number of examples that can be given. Other category is the criminal law, but tort belongs to the category of the civil law. For example, if I say that you have no right to defame anybody, or you cannot create nuisance with anybody, or you cannot be negligent. These all are the examples which are covered under the law of torts. Law has imposed a duty on all the individuals that we must respect the rights of other people and there must not be a breach of the duty. Whenever there will be a breach of the duty under the civil law, then first of all we have to see that whether it belongs to the category of law of contract, law of trust, or any other kind of the civil law. If it does not fall under any category of other civil law, then we can say that it comes under the law of torts. Now coming to the definition portion, first of all I want to make it clear that till date there is no any specific definition which could cover all the features of the law of torts, as we can say that under the Indian Contract Act there is a specific definition of the term contract. Here I will discuss the four definitions, one given under section 2 subsection M of Indian Limitation Act 1963, then the other three definitions by the different scholars, that is Salmond, Winfield and Fraser. Now coming to the definition which has been given under section 2 subsection M of the Indian Limitation Act, it says that tort is a civil wrong which is not a breach of contract or breach of trust. The definition given by the Salmond is that under the law of tort there is a infringement of the rights of the persons, and the remedy lies in the common law action for the unliquidated damages, which is neither breach of contract or breach of trust or any other equitable wrong. As per Winfield, tortious liability arises out of the liability imposed by the law, and it gives the right to get the unliquidated damages from the other party. As per the Fraser, there under the law of torts there is a liability towards the persons generally, that is the right in rem, and the injured party has a right to file a suit against the wrongdoer. From these definitions we can conclude that tort is a civil wrong. It is other than a breach of contract or breach of trust, and the main remedy under the law of torts is unliquidated damages. These 3 points also cover about the nature of the law of torts. When I have said that tort is a civil wrong, it means that tort is not a crime. Tort is a civil wrong. It means that it pertains to the private rights of the individuals. Under the law of tort, since it is a civil wrong, here the plaintiff himself files the suit against the wrongdoer, that is the defendant. Whereas in the case of the crime, though the crime has been committed against a particular person, but it is the state who takes the responsibility and files the case against the wrongdoer. Compensation is the main remedy under the law of torts, whereas under the law of crimes, it is the corporeal punishment that is given to the wrongdoer so that justice could be served. The second important point is that tort is other than a breach of contract. Under the law of contract, it is the parties themselves who had imposed obligations upon themselves, but when we talk about law of torts, it is the law that has imposed the duties upon the parties. Now, for example, if A says to B that I will provide you a radio set, but later on A fails to deliver the radio set to B, then that is the case of the breach of contract and not the case of the torts. Sometimes it happens that a single act may amount to a crime as well as a tort. When a single act amounts to crime as well as the tort, then in that case the person has the remedy under both the laws. He can file a case under the law of crimes also, that is under IPC, and he can file a civil suit under the law of torts. In the law of torts, he will get the remedy of the compensation, whereas justice will be meted out to that person by giving the punishment to the wrongdoer under the criminal law. Now, taking the another example, if the same act amounts to the wrongdoing of two civil wrongs, then the person can file the suit under the one law and can avail only a single remedy. For example, if A has given his horse to B for the safe custody as he is going outside, but B allows the horse of A to die out of the starvation and it does not take care of the horse. Here, B has committed two civil wrongs. One, the tort of negligence, and the other is breach of the contract of the bailment. Since two civil wrongs has been committed by the person, the remedy under the civil wrongs is the compensation. Then it is up to A whether he wants to file a suit under law of torts or he can file a suit under the law of contract. The third point is that under the law of torts, the remedy is of damages, and those damages are of unliquidated nature. Before clarifying the concept of unliquidated damages, I would like to here mention what are damages. Under the law of torts, damages means the compensation which is the main remedy that is provided to the party under the law of torts. Now, for example, if A has defamed B, the wrong done cannot be undone. But what is the remedy? That is to provide the compensation to the plaintiff. Now, the damages can be of unliquidated nature. Unliquidated means which is not priorly fixed. It will depend upon the facts and the circumstances of each case, and it is up to the court to decide how much damages, that is the compensation, will be given to the plaintiff as per the harm that is suffered by him due to the wrong committed by the defendant. Whereas in the case of law of contract, the damages are always liquidated in nature. Now, we can make a difference between torts and crime, torts and contract, torts and breach of trust. Crime is a public wrong, whereas the law of torts is a private wrong. Compensation is the main remedy which is given under law of torts, whereas punishment is the main remedy that is given under the law of crime. Under the law of contract, the duty is imposed upon the parties themselves, whereas under the law of the torts, it is the law that has put obligations upon both the parties. The concept of privity of contract, that is, a stranger to a contract cannot sue, was applicable in the case of law of torts also. For example, if A has done a contract with B and he, that is A, has made a breach of the contract, here the remedy that is available to the B is only against the A. C, who is a stranger to a contract, cannot sue both the parties. But this fallacy, that is privity of contract, was applicable in the case of Winterbottom versus Wright in the concept of the torts also. But this fallacy of privity of contract was remediated in the case of Donoghue versus Stevenson, and it was clearly stated that the concept of privity of contract will not be applicable into the case of the law of torts. Again, I am saying that under the law of contract, the compensation which is given to the parties is liquidated, whereas under the law of torts, the compensation is always unliquidated. In the case of the torts and the breach of trust, the same point is applicable of liquidated and unliquidated damages. In the case of the trust, the remedy is of the liquidated damages. And the origin of the law of torts is the common law, whereas the origin of the concept of the law of trust is the chancery courts. The two main authors, that is Winfield and Salmond, has also contributed a lot in developing the law of torts, and these authors have written the two books. Winfield has written the book of Law of Tort, whereas Salmond has written the book Law of Torts. Winfield theory is much more wider as compared to the theory of the Salmond, but both the theories hold respect in the present times. Now coming to the last portion, that is the essential of the law of torts. The first essential is that there must be some act or omission by the one party against the other party, and the second essential is that that act or omission must have resulted in some kind of the legal damage, that is injuria. Coming to the first point, that is about act or omission, it is mandatory that a party must have done some act which is prohibited by law, or he has omitted to do some act which the law supposes that a person must do. For example, it is the duty of the municipal corporation to maintain the park, but the corporation fails to maintain its duty and it forgets to put a fence around a poisonous tree. A child comes and plucks the fruit of that poisonous tree and he dies. This is the case of the omission on the part of the municipal corporation. But one thing that must be remembered is, under the law of torts, the obligation is always legal nature. Moral, religious, social duties are not imposed and we are not supposed to follow them under the law of torts. Coming to the second essential under the law of tort is that there must be some legal damage, in which we study two maxims: injuria sine demonum and demonum sine injuria. Injuria sine demonum means that there must be injury. Injury means violation of the legal right of a person without having any damages. Two authorities, leading authorities under this concept is Ashby versus White and Bhim Singh versus the state of Jammu and Kashmir, where the legal rights of the plaintiff has been violated, although no monetary loss has been suffered by them. The second concept is demonum sine injuria, in which there is damages, that is there is monetary loss, but since there was no violation of the legal rights of the person, so no remedy was given to them under the law of torts. The leading authority in this case is Gloucester Grammar School case and Ushaben versus the Bhagyalakshmi Chitra Mandir case. So From all this, we can say that law of torts is a branch that has developed, is developing, and its ambit is ever increasing and will ever grow. Thank you.